Witnessing ourselves, the highlighting of who we are. First, I want to apologize for the delay in the live stream. I was having some technical difficulties with the connection. But I want to welcome everyone to this prioritized vision of who we are, which means that when someone says, I love who I am, and I want you to feel it for who you are, that's the magic that Brenda is attempting to bring for many. And while many are saying, I have to use other sources of wisdom to highlight myself for who I am, that's part of the development process that she's offering, which is basically her vision is when you feel the love of who you are, you're not looking for others to validate your existence, or you're not looking for others to say, hey, I matter too, right? But this is where everyone is coming into conflict for the most part because they see that on the outside of who they are rather than the inside. But if we let too many of those souls in who declare themselves special for who they are, right? Brenda says we're all special. Others will say we're all one, unified in a vision of love for everybody. But in essence, when you want to create from that place of I'm magical and there's a mystery behind it, that means that many are going to start to experience it as a magical way to being versus I'm just one of many and I do my life and I do it proudly. That's where some people are. Okay, not everyone needs to feel special, but not everyone needs to feel like just, another wheel in the cog either. Okay, so what your own internal vision of what life is like for you is going to be very determined by the sources of wisdom that you hold near and dear to your heart. And Brenda's very, very controlling in the ideas of what she's bringing through, right? She was bringing through Jefferson. Now, his Thomas Jefferson vision would have been something more specific. But in essence, it's someone that she is aligned with. And he's saying, don't begrudge those of faith. In essence, because she's saying faith doesn't have to reside in any one source of wisdom. It's something that we create from within. And that is how we witness ourselves embodying the treasured words of many to say, I am worthy. And we look often to others outside of our own soul and say, yes, we are here and we do love each other. This is the nature of the souls looking to one another, right? But it's also that idea that many of us are working for a little bit more of a comfort level of soul rather than I need to make everyone feel as if they are magical in their moments. Because it can take a long time for us to come to that realization that many don't want us to feel magical for who we are. They want us to feel less than, based on those books of old. Okay, and this is why people are saying, I held off on doing any discovery because I wasn't quite sure which value system I was going to align with. And others are saying, I never had a choice. I was forced into this vision, correct? This is why the discernment of who your friends and family are very much wise words. You can still be in this world of love for your family and say, I honor those of old who were discredited in their visions based on one or two aspects of who they were because of how they were labeled as I was a detriment to my soul by the enslavement of others. And so he was not looked at with as much reverence in his mind as many. But in essence, his value system was very much of I'm of the Lord in certain circles. And yet he bypassed that vision most often and utilized his own inner wisdom to do what he needed to do for him. Okay? Now, when you go to Thomas Jefferson as he was, that's a very different aspecting of his soul versus the soul's risen soul that has a more enlightened view of his life, his liberty, and his pursuit of his virtue. For in that vision of love that she has for the truth of the moment, the wisdom was that happiness doesn't exclude virtue, and virtue doesn't exclude happiness. Okay, they're one and the same in many a mind. Some of us are here to look within and enjoy ourselves as we reflect upon our beauty, others are saying, I just feel good for who I am in each moment of each breath. Okay? And that can be a tragic return to some, to this idea that Brenda is opening up her hearts to many who would have been rejected at one point or another along the spectrum of soul. Do you understand why she brings through some of those, quote, revered souls who were then rejected and are now being revered in certain circles because they are saying, we did the best that we could with what we knew in the moment. But most are saying we knew better, but we couldn't do better based on the ideas of old that held us back from freeing ourselves from those limitations of what slave state or any kind of vision that Brenda can bring through that says, let's look at where are we going with this, right? This is why many are saying they're disconnecting from that idea of his vision was an internal vision that was brought forth. And this is who we're speaking to. We're speaking to those who understand that the wisdom within is it's like off the wall, right? Many souls are calling people names based on their values that they themselves grew up with. That's the crux of the moment. And when you come into this process, you are often asked to look at your vibration, to look at your heart source, and to say to yourself, do I honor everyone in the same way? Now, what that means is Brenda has always been in the idea of people around me are just people. They do and say things and act out these scripts of soul from various sources. And she says, I understand that vision of wisdom. I also understand that others are needing to embody the vibration of words of love in order to feel it. And others are needing to hear the reality of where they are with their souls. That's her bonus. You get to hear your own soul's wisdom, not just from the moment in which you vibrate, but the moment in which you rise out of whatever victimhood you have arrived on this plane with, because that's what others were saying. You're a victim because you came to this plane of love and happiness and cherishing each other, right? Most did not have that experience for the most part up until a certain amount of time. But in essence, the families and the friends and whatnot were all there always in these ideas of we are in the process of transitioning out of evolution into an involution type soul vision. That's the nature of looking within. We bring it down into our hearts, the wisdom, the guidance, the love. It's a meeting of the hearts is where our souls are. Okay, now your soul is very vibratory in its presentation. That's what someone would say to someone like me, because there is an energy vibration to everything. There is a projection of words that can feel hurtful but aren't meant in that way. This is what she's had to work with her own soul, which is the vibration in which I travel can sometimes have me aligning with those harder to handle souls that are a little bit more direct in their wisdom, or they're more direct in their pragmatic approach to soul, because that's where I go as well. Sometimes I lay it out there just like, boom, here it is. Here's the wisdom of the moment. That's where I was at one point, because I vibrate in the beauty of who we are all as souls. What I don't do is I don't necessarily agree with the sources of everyone's soul. Now, what that means is, if you are a soul on this plane and you're portraying yourself as the most loving, caring person, as I sometimes do, I will not ever say that I will portray myself as the most loving person to every soul. That is not who I am. I go for the truth, because I have to bring through the truth for the soul guidance for each soul. And that means that sometimes there's going to be contradictions in the minds that others are working with. Because sometimes the best thing for someone is to leave a certain vibrational charge in a book and to say, that served me up to a point. Others will reflect upon it and say, it is my duty to empower others to lift themselves up out of the restrictions of certain sources. So this is why Brenda is more open than many, but she's not the most open and carefree soul on this plane. I'm not here to tell you that I walk in rainbows and unicorns always. But what happens is when you go through a process where you recover some aspects that are potentially less restrictive than others, it can hold open the door for others who are a little bit more difficult to deal with. And that's where I find myself sometimes, because then I look and I say, okay, let me go within. Okay, it seems to be that I'm working with certain souls of my past who are on the other side of the veil at this point in time and who want to be revered and crosshatched. I loved my family no matter what, even when we didn't get along. Okay, that's where the nature of love of all souls really resides, is that we have that vision of when we have aligned, we feel free and beautiful in our vision. We allow for others to see who they are in their own ways most often. And yet when Brenda says that is also allowed for myself, I get to have my own voice of opinions about topics in certain ways. I'm not always going to be talking in the vision of some spiritual guru or a religious leader who thinks that they all have it figured out for everybody. I honor the fact that I don't. That's who I am. I know more about you only through the vision of who you are as a soul. I may not understand your soul's wisdom, but I know it will be brought through with the love and consolation for those souls who start to say, I can't even imagine how that must feel. It goes against my own wisdom sometimes to bring through the scripture for certain souls that need it, correct? What I don't do is I don't bring forth those ideas in the ways that portray everything as an honest to goodness truth versus those that were placed upon this plane in the minds of men, most often, who valued those words very much so and said it made sense to them. And then they said, yes, now we can see some of the limitations we placed upon our hearts. And this is why even from her own soul's vision, the love is always there, even when we disagree. Okay? And that's what people are kind of figuring out, is that disagreement doesn't always mean discontent. It can be an honest assumption of, I love you and I love the fact that we don't have the same opinions, because in essence, like mind is all around us. And Brenda loves to explore the opposites of what she believes. She loves hearing people's words of wisdom because she says to herself, how can I utilize this in my own teaching? If I see a limitation in someone else's teaching, I will often utilize that in my own to highlight something that might be able to be brought through in another way or form that doesn't constrict our world or limit us here, if we're looking for that kind of expression. Some people are saying, I love the structure and the constriction, right? No, Brenda does. She loves having constriction because in essence, it shows her where she is in her vibration. And sometimes it's not the best feeling for her, but when she feels it, then she's like, I get to go free myself from it again, because others are thinking that the vibration of constriction is a problem. It's not a problem. It's just a temporary state for her. I love my soul set me free from someone else's. That's her, right? How many people are feeling someone else's soul's vision upon them and not able to free themselves from it, because in essence others are being told that that's the only one that they can look to if they want to find their family, perhaps, right? That's the nature of the rapture. Do you know how, this is why Brenda knows how to go there with people. And some people will continue to believe in those ideas as possibilities for them. But what we've seen over and over and over through it's like the veils of history, is that many who claimed the rapture was there never occurred. But it did occur in one realm, is what others are going to say. And it already happened. Okay, that's just like the crucifixion stories are there for others to look at and to unwind for themselves at some point. It doesn't mean that it's not valuable information for many. Okay? And it also has its learning lessons within it, right? Because even if someone wasn't crucified, they were murdered. Okay, that's the nature of what the Seth information brought through, right? Was that the crucifixion was in the mind for many. Okay? And that's where a lot of those, soul states will operate, in that vision of, oh my gosh, there are other sources of wisdom from different planes of understanding. You want to make sure that when you go to your family and friends, they only have limited visions of who they are until they cross over. And then when they cross over, they have visions of who they get their information from as well. They also have access to their soul. And their soul is not done creating in other fields of vibration. And those souls are very wise to stay away from Brenda, because when she says, who are you to tell me as a soul how to be on this plane? Right? That's why Brenda isn't saying, I need you to be like me. I want you to be authentically you. What I can show you is a process that has been developed by soul for souls. That's the tagline that my own soul came through with for many others who are also in the process of discovery of who they are. It's a process of love for all of us that doesn't cherry pick the wisdom. It's about saying, you may have your own beliefs, religious beliefs on the line, saying that you believe this, and this one might have this belief, but what comes together in the nature of love is always there, even when there's conflict, or even when there is a disbelief that someone else may have more information than you about a certain topic. Brenda's always looking for those who have higher levels of understanding in her life. Not that she degrades anyone who doesn't, but what she's saying is we have a problem with information disconnect on this screen, right? It's on the whole earth where people are working with various sources of wisdom, and the discovery of your soul is your heart's. It's where you get the validations of love always. It also is your wisdom, and you don't want to deny your wisdom. Trust me when I say that your wisdom is spectacular with everything that you've built along the way. You are not just here and in one other realm. You are not just here and in two other realms. Okay? You are not just here and then you cross over and then you're done. So you keep expanding your soul vision, and there are many souls who vibrate in the beauty of, I'm aware of the teachings of the Lord as the best for me, but I'm seeing other people who are having all these experiences, and they bring forth so much wisdom and love and adoration for not only themselves, but for others. They bring forth the future for others. They bring forth the probability for others. Because that's the tapping in of love. And everyone who starts to see why you wouldn't want someone tapping into the nature of, I'm going to plant horrible things for you via fear and condemnation, right? That's what those souls are working with, how to get out of fear and condemnation. Now, what Brenda's looking at is, people assume we're all divided in our views. We're highlighting the similarities in many, right? Because if we can all agree to disagree on certain aspects, then we're in a good place. We can go about our business and do our thing. It's when others are saying, I need you to believe like I do, as if you've gone in and done your inner work yourself. Right? So this is why many who are working with the idea of, I've reached a level of soul level understanding, I've attracted enough souls to sit there and be able to validate who I am, various sources of wisdom, right? I didn't come here on my own. I'm not a lone wolf, and I know that, but I operate on that vision that I have to do a lot of internal discovery to come into the process of love of self. That's what it took, right? I always loved myself. I didn't discredit it. What I did was I started letting other souls outside of who I am in who were telling me what they themselves were planted with. That's what can happen is if you go to the nature of a channel and whatnot, and if you're not held up high, you could start hearing the negativity from other souls because they themselves were part of that mix. And they start to show you what you brought to them. And that's the nature of projection as well that we're working with. Many souls on the soul level do project their own vision of who they are here, right? There's a difference in the process. You want the wisdom of their souls, not the projections of who they were in the way in which they were. You want the wisdom of their souls, not the projections of their souls. And their wisdom is coming forth very kindly. When people start to realize that that is the reality they created, but when they are in the vision of your soul, our souls know us better than anybody else on this plane. I can guarantee you that. Now others are saying, well, I'm a part of this soul group. There are groupings that come together. Brenda hears from so many people outside of her sphere of awareness, right? She is not aware of the global impact that she has when she works with the pilot program that she's putting together. It's more like a pilot program, but it's nature of the massaging of the ego. That's where people are like, is this massaging her ego or is it massaging mine? It's not about massaging your ego. When they say, I know there are higher levels of souls that have more information than mine, why in the world do you assume that to be the case? If I can bring through your source of wisdom that is connected to the love of all, then you could say, yeah, maybe I don't want to go to the other plane of awareness that says that there's a spiritual hierarchy that's been created for us to work with, right? There are higher levels of wisdoms, okay? But your soul is your best friend, okay? It's like fitting like a glove. That's what Brenda was told. It fits like a glove because you hear everything that's amazing and wonderful about you, and also you get the wisdom of what you are working with or what you are dealing with and who you're working with and what's going on. Those values play out very little on the soul level. It's a very like understanding and neutral sounding soul. And it is also very conditioned in the mind of peace. That's where others are thinking peace is needed at all costs. But her soul is the one that brought through that idea that she was working with peace at all cost, which was then bypassing certain areas of soul for her that would have been more pleasant for her, because instead she took the bullets for some people in the mind. She took the bullets. She let people come into her vibration who were downgrading her and telling her she was less than and making fun of her and whatnot. And when they do that, they don't understand that they're actually creating that not only for her, but for them. And it's not a spiritual bypassing. It's part of that understanding of when you cross over, you get to reveal to yourself who you really are and what you brought to the party, let's just say. What am I bringing to the party? Okay? And we want people to explore the fun nature of what love of self is, and that idea of my internal compass is guiding me every day. But many people do not have the ability to traverse other paths yet. It's all there though. They can't stop you from going within. And that's what we want everyone to guide themselves with, that understanding that no matter what, your internal guidance system is who you are as soul. It is the nature of what you're creating with, and it is the vibration that you are working with always. What you're doing when you go through the process of enlightenment is you're releasing the pain Some will say releasing the prosperity mindset that says that I can't make money in order to be, spiritually enlightened or whatnot. That there's no rules. They don't have the rules. It's more about what is it that makes sense for each soul. Your soul knows what's best for you. Period. Your soul knows where you've been, knows where you're going, and how to get there. And that's why Brenda says it's a prosperous vision for those of us who can handle it. Right? When we do that vision of I know how to bring forth your soul from a place of love of who you are. Does that not sound like the best thing ever? And then you open up to the nature of I love who we are. That's the next step for her, is that in that idea of I love who we are, Brenda says, I love to learn. And my learning process isn't always enjoyable, but it's still a growth process for me because I get to grow in my understanding of where other people are coming from or what sources of wisdom that they're utilizing. And it doesn't mean that I will go to every source and try to dig deep in every source, but I will look to those that either affected my family, my friends, my loved ones, or myself and say, is this the best wisdom for me in this moment and in this breath? Okay? And so when you go within and you highlight who you are, this is also the nature of the reflection of your own views towards you. So when you say, I'm beautiful, wise, and strong, that's who she is. When you say, I'm lonely and lovely and always going to be that way, that is also some of her visions that she has. Sometimes she's lonely. This can be a lonely path when you go through the process of discovery and people start to spread their wings and fly. They often find others who align with them as well and make them feel beautiful for who they are. And when we have others who are saying, your vision isn't as good as mine, and then they vibrate in it and they say, oh, I'm here, I'm feeling good, I'm superior. And it's like you've actually demeaned yourself by saying you're superior to somebody else because you haven't understood the nature of the reflexive vision. We reflect to each other who we are. Okay, and that's why Brenda is always going, well, let me hold up a mirror to you for you to see what you're saying to another aspect of who you are. Okay, this is why people are conditioned to be kind and loving and gentle, but in essence, others are saying sometimes we have to put up a fight for our self-worth, right? Sometimes we do because others are telling us we're not. And so Brenda's like, well, the proof's in the pudding with me because I'll let you know from a soul level what's happening. But in essence, we want everyone to be able to naturally feel the beauty and the bounty of who they are, where they are, but not with this understanding that anything has to change, but for those who are looking for a different experience of who they are, where they can perhaps start to hear more of the wisdom of who they are without some of the negative messages that have kept coming in through either... It's usually societal means, our family, but usually it's a societal kind of vision that comes in and we choose or hunt and peck for those sources that make us look wise and discovery. And Brenda's always like, let's really look at these words and ask us, what do these words tell us subconsciously? Okay, so some people will look at words and they'll say, that sounds good. But what they don't realize is they're actually reinforcing the fear. This was brought through so well by Brenda when she looked at the nature of people who carry weaponry on them, right? And they say it's for their protection. But subconsciously, they are sending the message that they're still working in fear. It doesn't mean anything is bad. It doesn't mean that anything is going to happen to them that's bad, but it is an attraction zone for that type of energy. Okay? This is why we're loved, because people start to understand the circuitry of our brains is not just about what's conscious, but the unconscious. And what we can see in our vibration is what we're creating. Your soul can give you the paths of wonder and discovery or the pain paths. She's had some pain paths for sure. And that's why she's like, I know how to get myself out of it now, because I allow other souls who are trying to create victimhood to vibrate in a system of, it's not her system. She puts them on a path of empowerment, which means they're coming through trying to say that that's where she is. And she's like, I understand that. That's where I'm good. I'm good on the path of empowerment. Soul wisdom is when I start to do my soul work and the soul creation in the process and programs and whatever that I vibrate in, or in the vision of what I'm doing right here, where I say, I love you too. I will grant you whatever wisdom is appropriate for you in this minute. Okay, that's the soul level understanding, is you're always revered by your own soul. You don't have to sit there and take out any blame game visions for anybody. We all know who's at fault, is what some souls will say. And then they'll go and they'll blame some, made up character or a vibration. There's a vibration of the devil that others think that they're working with, and they have no idea. It's of the mind for the most part. It's not the actual vibration of anyone's soul that vibrated here, except for one or two souls, perhaps, who may have taken that on in their mind as of that. And that's why Brenda herself is more, yeah, okay, good luck, people. Those vibrations are there to help relieve the stress of who we are. That's what Brenda has worked with. Those souls who believed that they were cherishing and actively working in that kind of vibration. And she had to hear those souls from that kind of thought process. And it wasn't it wasn't painful for her, but it was confusing, because she's like, I don't understand this. This isn't the reality of who they are as souls. And they realize that when they go over. They realize they're not really in that vibration. And if someone is in a vibration that isn't good, you can easily make a choice to leave the vibration. You make a different choice. That's why those ideas of I need to go save someone else's soul, no, you do not. They have free will and soul sovereignty. They can choose to leave whatever vibration they want. Okay? Now, for us here, that's a very different kind of understanding. Okay, that's a different kind of health and wellness kind of expression. Brenda is more beautiful than ever when she does those work with those souls that are saying they are here to help souls rather than they are here to help the people here. Okay? Souls are claiming they are victimhood and that they are stuck. And we are not going to create the idea that souls are stuck in any vibration. Once they have been given the vibration of love that they have received, because every soul gets the vibration of love, then they can choose to go create the havoc for others who claim that they're receiving the havoc of others. Okay, that's why Brenda has chosen certain souls that she deals with, and their families say that they want to go help, save souls that are stuck in a certain vibration. And the thing is if they're stuck in a certain vibration, they wouldn't be choosing it voluntarily, is what others would say. She says, you're creating that for them. Release that vision that you need to create unstuck souls. It's just a mind game for the most part on this plane. Others are creating with all sorts of visions of demons and angels and whatnot, and those are souls who understand the nature of the vibration in which we vibrate, and those who say, I attract those souls, right? Because they want to, quote, see and experience that kind of soul. It doesn't mean that there aren't souls that vibrate in lower vibrations, but they can choose to vibrate out of it if they want to. They just haven't chosen to. And if you are there and they're there, I'm going to give you this experience of who you are as a soul so you can help lift yourself up by thinking that you're going to, quote, raise me up into a different vision of love. Thank you for your love that you've sent me that has raised my vision. Now, this would be the nature of those who are of prayer as well. And we want you to think carefully about what the conditioning of that is. Because if someone says that someone has crossed over in a way, shape, and form that is out of the awareness of any person, are we going to put them in a hellish vibration because people didn't pray for them? No. It is an automatic understanding. Those souls came here choosing a certain path. They came here choosing certain experiences. They came here in form within the vision of I have chosen who I come into form with. So there is no I'm my own lone wolf on the other side of the veil. Okay? Everyone has the ability, they can create that experience of being alone. Brenda does so wonderfully because she's like, when I cross over, I just want to go to a little resting space that's very, comfortable, just to relax for a little bit, where I'm not dealing with all kinds of people and souls and whatnot. I just want to chill for a little bit, and then I'll go vibrate in the vibrancy of who I am as a confident, carefree soul. Because that's who I am. People are like, you're confident in your vision. It's why I do what I do. Because we create what we focus on. So if people are focused on the disaster of souls, what do you think they're going to be experiencing? This is why all of those ideas, it doesn't mean that they're going to be creating personal disasters, but they might be getting the disastrous visions that others themselves placed upon her. Right? Versus the heartfelt ones. And this is why Brenda herself even recently said, I need to remember to focus on the positive of the relationships that I created with and not just the negative. The loving moments, the carefree moments, the moments of just daily, daily living that doesn't have to be flying high in my mind, or even that idea that I don't have to be feeling low. I'm fluctuating in my vibration. I don't stay stagnant, and neither do you. Think about how many of you are just fine as you are, and then there are some times when you're like, I don't feel good. And that's okay. You're living your lives. That's the beauty of it. You're not trying to focus on always having a high vibration that can what? Prove to others you're what? Special? Brenda knows what that is. That's why she's like, I honor my vision that sometimes I feel like crap. Because I might not be feeling beautiful for who I am in my mind sometimes. That's true. It happens sometimes. But guess when that happens? It's when I let other people's visions of who they think I am, or the pressure to be beautiful from society, right? That plays within my mind sometimes. Okay? So we want everyone to hold on to their hats and glasses and get ready for a wild ride. When you go to Seoul, it can be a luxury cruise. It can be the nature of, I love who I am always. It can be the nature of, where are we going now? Right? If we can keep continuing to create and build the excitement of Seoul versus the fear of it, that's why many people are looking towards those souls that are saying, you're beautiful for who you are, and so am If you can say that to somebody, you've got the golden ticket to paradise, because many people are thinking beauty means like the physical presentation. That's never what it is. It's not the physical presentation, although that's part of it, but it's the whole enchilada of who we are as souls. Okay, my soul just chooses to come through with the words is beautiful because I feel it as that. The magic and mystery come through as well. The magic isn't as strong as it was just a year ago, but it also has its moments of creative endeavors that I've been struggling with in certain circles, because I let certain souls come in that have a duty to restrict who I am in the name of their family tree. So I started dealing with family tree. And so there are souls here who say that they are worried about their family tree, right? Trust me, they don't have the attachments that they had here. We don't. They learned. There's no attachment. They love their lives. But that doesn't mean that they're sitting there going to hold you accountable for not believing in the same thing they did. They would understand it, because they themselves have the freedom to create as souls. You start to come together and you start to create together and see what you create. And some souls will say, I'm ready to move on from this family tree and I'm going to go work with another one. That's what Brenda does. She's like, I'm ready to move to a different family tree sometimes. Okay, and so sometimes I work with other people's family trees. It's the same thing with souls. Sometimes I'm working with other souls from other families, and they're beautiful for who they are. You think everyone is like they are here. That's not how it works. If you're able to reach those higher levels of love, the astral plane is probably the hardest for most souls, because once they reach it, they start to hear various souls. So that's why you lift yourself above it if you can, to that place of my vibration understands that even in that plane, they still love who they are. And that's what they're showing us. They love who they are. Okay? Everyone who is walking upon this plane loves who they are, because they're here and they're breathing. They're existing in a place that might not be the best for them. They may want better experiences. Some people are absolutely in survival mode. Others are, I'm in survival mode, but I'm doing just fine. That's where I was in many ways as well at certain times in my past, right? This is the nature of where victimhood can come in, right? Am I really safe in this moment, right? Others are not feeling safe. Others are not feeling secure, and other people are very much aware of the realities of whether or not they are safe when they exit their home. Okay, based on different ideas of who's trying to oppress others or who's trying to spread fear and whatnot. Okay, or the limited mindsets that we have of many who say, yeah, I understand that. Okay, me going out the door, the only fear that I will have necessarily is if I put myself in a position where I need to look around for potential, well, let's just say, you know, if I was to run across, I won't go on a trail by myself, at least without some kind of pepper spray or something. And it's not because of the wild animals, let's put it that way. Okay, and that's a fear that's been passed along to a lot of the females too. Depending on who you are, many females will be brave and go and do whatever they want. And that's a great place to be. But other people, when they just go out and the presentation of who they are, they're getting battered. And it could be just in the mindset, or people are literally, you know, confronting them with how they look or act or whatnot. Okay, and it's not about any one group or party or belief system or anything like that. It's looking at people and saying there's something wrong with you, versus point those fingers back and say, what in the world am I doing looking at someone outside of who I am and saying there's something wrong with who you're presenting at? These are born souls, people. Do not degrade the other souls around you because they portray themselves differently. Your soul loves you no matter what, but you will also get the wisdom of what you're actually working with. And I want you to understand that, because there is the total self-acceptance of, I love who I am, but my family did not, is what many are saying. And that's why we want people to understand that, right? Because others will say, well, you're disagreeing with me. And that might be the case, right? That's a different kind of conflict. But if you're looking at someone else and how they are presenting, right? Whether it's the shape, the color, the, you know, symbols, or the things that they're wearing that symbolize certain things, right? That say, you know, it could be that I'm wearing a turban. It could be that I'm wearing a cross. It could be that, you know, I've got the peace sign, you know, whatever that is that symbolizes something about them. But if they're souls, okay? So it's not about demeaning them. And others are saying, she rides so high in that, but there's a hypocrisy that many are riding in. Brenda has her moments of it, because she's like, yeah, I'll find myself looking at someone, and it's more like, I will utilize those ideas. For instance, and I will be very honest, when I see a MAGA hat, for instance, my warning bells go off. And when I say that, it's because in essence, due to the nature of the information that's being portrayed, although my soul will give me the idea of whether or not it's actually a problem or not to deal with someone who's identified with a certain party, principle, or organization type deal. But I will be more hesitant to engage with their souls. Only in the idea that if they need you to agree or it's a danger, then that is understood. Anyone that is going to threaten violence based on superficial characteristics needs to think again about what they're creating as souls. It's beautiful. You're showing us more about who we are and what we're here to do. It's not who you are, though, as a soul. I can guarantee you. It's not who you are. It's part of your identity. It's part of your soul's working out of certain issues, not from the label of diagnosis or anything like that. We all have these. I had to go through my own racial bias undoing when I was a teenager and a young adult, because it wasn't in my adulthood. And it was something that was put upon me. I started buying into certain ideas. And it wasn't that it was about the color of the skin. It was just more about, I want there to be free and open discovery of why we're labeling people illegal aliens versus what they really should be labeled as. Because when we label people things that sound bad or scary, there's an acknowledgement of the law. But when we utilize terms, and strategic understanding of politics is huge with her, because we're dehumanizing them by saying aliens, okay? You're going to start to hear the words of love come through when people say, if you put a negative label on this lady, you are vibrating in the beauty of who you are. And you'll also get sent a mirror right back at you. It is literally you calling someone something other than loving for who they are. That's why it can be a painful process. And so this is why people learn to be more considerate and kind when they go through the process of exploration. If you're doing this to receive your own soul's wisdom, you're going to have a much easier time. Once you decide, I want to go and I'm going to start giving people their guidance and wisdom, and I go public and I'm going to start, bringing in other souls, that's when you have to really clear out a lot of the clutter. We're going to call it clutter, soul clutter. Okay, it's not about anything being bad, but it's just not the highest vibration. So you want to get rid of those biases if you can. You want to look at them with kindness and consideration and say, that wasn't mine. It was placed upon me by society or my family or my friends. And some people say, but it works with my life. I love feeling that way. And yeah, you don't want to go to soul when you're feeling good about being bad. It's like, it comes back to you in a way that you won't really appreciate. Let's put it that way. It's not that you'll hear the negativity in the same way, but your soul will give you those experiences that showcase you feeling that way. Okay? And that's why people start to go, whoa. I've had to deal with some energetic vibrations that were not pleasant. Had me on my closet floor crying because of situations and things that I chose to create. Okay? And that's why I know that most people actually haven't done the things that I've done, because I've taken some big risk and I've done some beautiful but not so smart things with certain souls. Okay? So with that, I want to say thank you for watching. And as always, I want to remind people, as my soul told me to do, stay curious, wise, and soulful. Have a wonderful day.